Hello, my name is Kevin Moore, and I am the chair of the Education and University Outreach Committee for the CFA St. Louis Society. Today, I just wanted to go over a few slides that talks about the CFA program and the CFA curriculum and how that can ultimately benefit you as you transition from your undergraduate and graduate studies to your professional career. So we're going to pull up a few slides that I'm going to reference throughout the presentation. And starting on this third page, this really is the punchline of why professionals like myself decided to go down this route. Whereas a recent candidate went through the program and completed the program, said, our industry has so many different types of products and the CFA program covers every single different area. And that's really going to be the major theme of these slides that we walk through today, just because the curriculum is so broad in nature and it touches so many different areas that regardless of what your interests ultimately wind up being, the CFA program is going to cover that in one way, shape, or form. Here are some of the broad categories that are covered throughout the CFA program's curriculum, where it talks about things such as ethics. You look at things like economics and statistics throughout the course of your study. You do things like accounting. You cover a number of different asset classes ranging from equity to fixed income to alternative asset classes. And you ultimately wind up landing with portfolio management, risk management, performance measurement, and evaluation as part of the curriculum as you progress from levels 1 to 2 to 3. So really, once again, covering such a broad scope of topics that by going down this path, you're not necessarily pigeonholing yourself to being set up for only one specific career. Your doors are going to remain very wide and very wide open for you if you decide to go down this route. Here we have a breakdown of the 3 different levels and the topic areas that are covered within each of those levels. And just to walk through the different squares here, the green square is going to be investment tools, and you see a number of different underlying subcategories that fall under the investment tools section. The purple square is going to be the asset class section, and you have a number of different subcategories there, once again, ranging from equity to fixed income to derivatives to alternative investments. And then you're also going to have the yellow square, which is portfolio management and wealth planning, and then the blue square, which is constant throughout the 3 levels, which covers ethics. And you'll notice here that the squares are going to be different sizes as you move from level 1 to level 2 to level 3. Where if you look at the purple square as an example, the weighting on asset classes is going to increase as you move through the program. And you see how that square gets larger, which corresponds with a larger weight to asset classes, particularly when you get to level 3. Similarly, you see the yellow square getting larger as you move through the program, and that's going to be focusing on portfolio management and wealth planning, where that's really the major focus and the largest weighting once you get to level 3, as you have to think through the mind of a portfolio manager, and it really wraps everything up from some of those topics that you saw in levels 1 and levels 2. And then you're going to also see how ethics remains the same throughout. That is a constant in the curriculum with that particular weighting. When you're looking at investment tools, as an example, you're going to see a decreasing weighting as you move from level to level, with it being a major focus of level 1. Level 2, still a pretty serious category within that particular scope of that exam, but in level 3, that particular category rolls off entirely as portfolio management and asset classes really become the major focus of that piece. It's important to note here that as you move from level 1 to 2 to 3, the format of the test changes quite a bit, and we're going to talk about just how frequent the test is going to be administered in 2021 and going forward. But level 1 is going to be entirely multiple choice. All of those questions are independent of each other. So in level 1, there's 120 multiple choice questions in the morning and 120 multiple choice questions in the afternoon. And once again, all of those are going to be independent of each other, and you have A, B, or C laid out in front of you for you to come up with the best answer. Level 2 is going to look very different in one of the sessions, where the number of questions compared to level 1 is going to be trimmed in half. So you have 60 questions in the morning and 60 in the afternoon, but the format of the test changes entirely. So instead of having just independent multiple choice questions, now you have short stories that are accompanied by 6 questions. And so there's 10 short stories in the morning and 10 short stories in the afternoon. 6 questions are related to each story. So once again, 60 questions in the morning, 60 in the afternoon. Because you have to read through a short story and you have to sift through a lot of information, and the questions become more challenging than what you saw in level 1, time management becomes much more of a factor as you get into levels 2 and levels 3, because you're having to decide, what information you need, what information you might not need. The calculations become much more involved. The topic areas themselves become much harder than what you saw in level 1. And so once again, there's just more weighting on each question, and you can wind up finding yourself in a trap, so to speak, if you're spending too much time on one particular answer. You sometimes just have to move on and take your bets elsewhere. Level 3, once again, the format changes to where the morning is more of a constructed response approach, to where you have to type in now short bullet points to answer each question. A lot of the questions are related to each other. And so if you start with question A and answer it one way, that oftentimes is going to flow into B and C and D and E and so on and so forth. So you got to be careful with your calculations to making sure that you're doing them correctly, because it can affect a future answer. After the constructed response part in the morning for level 3, then you get back to the short story that you saw in level 2, with the story being there. You have to read through it, sift through what you need versus what you don't need, and then 6 questions that accompany that short story. And by this point, you're pretty familiar with that setup since you already had that in level 2. But with these different formats that you see throughout the curriculum, it's important to note that the way that you prepared for level 1 may not necessarily be the best way to approach level 2. And if you pass level 2, that same exact approach may not be the best way to attack level 3. Because of these changing formats, you may need to weave in some different approaches into your study habits to make sure that you're appropriately preparing yourself for the exam day. Speaking of preparation, it's important to note here that this is a pretty major time commitment for each of these levels. The general rule of thumb is that you spend about 300 hours preparing for each test as you progress through the curriculum. So if you think about the fact that you may have other responsibilities in the form of a day job or in the form of graduate studies or even undergraduate studies for some level 1 candidates, you have to juggle all that. So in order to put in the appropriate amount of time to prepare for each of the levels, the general rule of thumb, once again, is to start about 5 to 6 months out and start to ramp up your studying as you get closer and closer to exam day. Not only do you have to pass the 3 levels, as we talked about on the previous page, but there's other pieces to this CFA equation before you get the final CFA charter. You have to have at least you have to at least be in your final year of your bachelor's degree or already have it. You have to complete the exams, as that's the most important piece. And then you have to have at least 4 years of work experience. And it's not a specific job that you need to be in by any means, because the curriculum is so broad in nature, but generally related to finance, accounting, economics, statistics is really all they're looking for. And then once you have all these pieces in place, then you can finally get that CFA charter. I mentioned at the beginning of my comments that starting in 2021 and going forward, the exam schedule is going to look a little bit different as they've moved to a computer-based testing model. Previously, Level 1 was only offered twice a year, and levels 2 and 3 were only offered once a year. But now, level 1 is going to be offered 4 times a year, and levels 2 and 3 are going to be offered twice a year each. And you can see here what the new exam cycle actually looks like, with level 1 being offered in February, May, August, and November, level 2 being offered in May and August, and level 3 being offered in May and November. So the good thing for candidates now is that if you do stumble at some point along the way, you can sit for that same exam a little bit quicker than you had been able to historically. So the question always comes up, why would I go down this path if it really requires about 300 hours of prep for each of the levels? Why would I want to put myself in that type of a situation? And this slide really gets at the why for that type of a commitment, where here we're comparing those individuals that have received their bachelor's degree and received their graduate level degree, and compared non-charter holders, which is the gray bar that you see on this page, versus the CFA charter holders, which is the blue bar on this page. And regardless of if you only have your bachelor's degree or you have your graduate degree, you can see that the blue bar is going to be pretty significantly higher than the gray bar, meaning that the reason that you go down this path is because you ultimately are going to get compensated more so than if you weren't to go down this path. And a lot of candidates will tell you, including myself, that by going down this path and getting the CFA charter, that job opportunities open up for you that you may not otherwise have. There's a lot of employers out there that are looking for CFA charter holders for specific roles. It's a world-renowned and well-known designation, so employers are very in tune with it, which has become more of a requirement, or at least starting down this path and being a level 1, level 2, or level 3 candidate in order to achieve higher job titles than just simply an entry-level role. Additional benefits to being a CFA charter have to do with certain series exams and you being able to be exempt from those exams. So you look here, there's Series 65, Series 86, Series 16 mentioned. If you were to go down this path and get your CFA charter before going to grad school, there are certain universities that will just honor that CFA charter, and you don't have to take any sort of entry-level exam or get a specific score. So that's another important piece to think about. And then on top of that, if you are to want to go down and get additional certifications like the CIPM, which is performance measurement, or the CFP, certified financial planner, there's certain areas of those curriculums that you can be exempt from, just because the CFA is so broad that there's a lot of overlap between this particular designation and others. So that's another benefit as well. By going through the curriculum, there's a lot of benefits that you can get from it. It's extremely challenging. It's a huge commitment, as I mentioned before. You're juggling a lot of other responsibilities that you may have in your work and your personal life. But sticking with the curriculum itself, it covers all different types of investments, and you're going to be exposed to things that you haven't seen before. It's also going to test you on so many different types of analyses. And so you're going to become very fluent in those types of analysis and management skills. You're also going to differentiate yourself relative to other candidates in the professional world that may be going for a similar role as you progress through your career. So that's ultimately going to be a major part of this, is some of the personal growth that comes from it, some of the additional benefits that you're going to receive down the line. And then you're also going to create a lot of networking opportunities, where I'm a volunteer for the CFA St. Louis Society. And in my volunteer work, I come across a lot of other very well-established financial professionals, and it creates a lot of potential opportunities for you as you get to know more and more people in different segments of financial services. And also, like I mentioned before, industry employers recognize the CFA as a very tough designation. And because of that, they value the type of commitment and the amount of time that it takes to receive the CFA letters after your name. So it's something that is known around the world, it's well recognized, and it can really help you out longer term once you can get through the program. Speaking of employers in the St. Louis area, here's the employers that have the highest number of CFA charter holders. And you're going to see a lot of familiar names here, from Edward Jones to Wells Fargo to Stifel to Bank of America, Merrill Lynch. You see Marcia McLennan, that's Mercer, the firm that I work for, Asset Consulting Group, an investment consulting firm, really values the charter. And then you see NISA, which is going to be more of a fixed income focused asset management shop, Kennedy Capital Management, more of an equity asset management shop. You see Commerce Bank and Reinsurance Group of America, which is RGA. And you may have heard that acronym before. A very, very large company that has a very big presence in St. Louis. So getting back to the earlier comments that I made about this being a very well-known and recognized designation on the employer side. This is just a small sample of that, and it ultimately shows that people are not only looking for CFA charter holders, but they really, really value it for those candidates that they may come across. Ultimately, just wanted to end on this slide where if you want more information, the website is really a great tool for you to go and poke around and see some of the resources that are out there and learn more about the program. Of course, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Once again, my name is Kevin Moore. Feel free to shoot me a note if you want to connect on LinkedIn. Happy to help in whatever way that I can, but just wanted to close out and ultimately tie this together and say, I am very, very pleased that I went down this road. It ultimately really helped my career, and it really sped up my learning curve much quicker than I otherwise would have experienced had I not gone down the CFA curriculum path. So thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out at any point.